What is up, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Not So Stupid podcast. In today's episode, we have a very special guest, Coach K, Karon Hawkins. He has done damn near everything in the fitness and nutrition space, going from doing insanity, being a group instructor, a dance instructor, to regular weightlifting, to focusing on mobility and trying to heal a lot of the injuries that he suffered throughout his life, to finally ending up at Flobility, which is what he is most well known for and what you're going to find a lot of on his Instagram account. And it'll be a good bulk of the conversation today as well. The progression itself is really cool just because, Flobility is still relatively it's not as well known, but to Karan, he has found a lot of the answers that he's been looking for with his body. And he's really going with this and running with it, and he's sharing all of the results that he's getting with other people and helping them see different changes in their body that he never thought was possible or didn't think was possible to this degree. So helping people see health from an entirely new perspective, revolving around the spine and doing that on a daily basis, helping that be your new normal. So really cool conversation, introduction to Flobility and getting to know Karan pretty well. But I'm going to stop yammering right now and get right into the interview. So here is the interview with Karon Hawkins.
Karon Hawkins, Coach Chronic, what's good, bro?
What's good, Juma? I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. I'm very happy to have you on the show. I've been wanting this for a little while now. For the people that don't know who you are, though, want to give yourself a little introduction of who you are, what you do, how you got to where you're at right now?
Sure. So my name's Karon Hawkins. I'm from New York City, born and raised in Queens. Skipping ahead through elementary, middle school, all that. I eventually went to high school out in Deerfield Academy in Massachusetts. And then from there, I went to college at Carnegie Mellon University. I studied information systems and business, kind of like a computer science and business hybrid, but not as difficult, I would say, as a computer science degree, like on its own. But after that, I went back to New York to basically work in corporate America for a year. I was a cybersecurity analyst, and I did that for about a year. And then, long story short, I was miserable. So I ended up quitting my job, going back to school, coming back to Pittsburgh, studied basically an exercise physiology degree. It's technically called health and physical activity, but a lot of the principles of XPhys we covered. Like I was in the lab, I was learning about how the body responds to exercise, which is pretty much what that is. And got the degree done in a year. And then, on the side, I was doing training for free for a while and worked as basically a desk attendant at a gym, kind of watching and surveying, the market, if you will, trying to understand what people wanted, why they wanted it, and just kind of took mental notes along the way. A lot of struggle through that. I wasn't very good with money. I'm still not very good with money. So my student loans ran out very quickly, and, basic necessities came into question because, $7.25 an hour is not going to cover all my bills, especially when I could only work X amount of hours because of school. So I was working a few jobs to try and get it. And when I say jobs, I really mean gigs. So my only official job was I was a instructor at Crunch. I did a bunch of classes, and then I was a desk attendant, and then I was an instructor at CMU, Carnegie Mellon as well, doing fitness classes there too. And I was also a dance instructor at Level Up Studios, which was another dance studio. So I was bouncing all over the place, and I was training people for free, and it was just a lot. But I eventually honed in on online coaching after seeing Cody Boom Boom's page, who we will know. He essentially inspired me to really go deep with it because I felt that in person I love in person. It's honestly the best version of training for me personally. However, I started to realize how important my time was because, I couldn't be at 10 places at once, and I wasn't accounting for, in terms of how I price things, I wasn't accounting for travel. I wasn't accounting for the amount of time it took for me to get from one place to another. And I wasn't adjusting my prices. So to give you some perspective, I was doing training for free for a couple months, maybe 3 or 4. And then my clients started getting results and they're like, yo, we got to pay you. So that's honestly where I first learned the value of providing value, where people would just kind of give you money if you gave them something they cared about, and basically honed in on a basic need that they had, whether it was, to feel good, feel good about themselves, be confident, and exercise and, body composition, changes gave them that. While at the same time we would talk and like, they would tell me things and I would help them do that stuff too. So it was kind of like coaching, even though I was just a personal trainer.
Mm-hmm.
And I was charging like $15 an hour for sessions for a long time, 15 for students and 30 for adults. Excuse me. And then when I again realized the value that I was providing, I doubled to 30 for students and not 60 for adults. I think I did like 45 or 40, something like that. But it was cheap is the point. It was very cheap. Considering it took me a long time to get from client to client, and I was training them for a full hour. So that math didn't work well in my favor. But it's all good because for me, client interaction is one of the most important components of being a good trainer or a good coach. Learning how to bring yourself to different people's levels and needs was something that I honed in on and learned how to do pretty well, I think, because I was starting to see that it was easier for me to connect with my clients like quicker. I would start seeing things like they would ask me about stuff outside of training, like I knew anything, like they would ask me like, I'm thinking about doing this thing. And I'm like, I'm a trainer. Like, what are you asking me about that for?
Kind of came a little bit of a life coach and a trainer at the same time.
Yeah. It kind of comes with it. I mean, obviously, all about that, being an online coach for so long and helping people in person too. So, the idea of us being more than just like someone that helps them with their body spoke to me a lot. And I felt that with the online coaching component, I could really do that because now they would have more access to me because they're paying more and all that. So I reached out to Cody, kind of circling back to that. And I was like, hey, man, I'd love to, chat with you for 10, 15 minutes. I had no clue what his schedule was like or anything. I just like reached out, emailed him. And he was like, hey, man, I'm busy. I can't just jump on the phone. And although I certainly did not have the money, it would certainly come at a detriment to something, whether it be food or rent or something. I was like, hey, man, like how much? Like, I'll pay you. How much is 10, 15 minutes of your time? And, he didn't like say, but he said, all right, bro, let's do a call. He ended up talking to me for 45 minutes and gave me a complete blueprint. I think I still have those notes from 2-3 years ago. Excuse me.
Man.
Yeah, it was insane, man. He just gave me everything I needed to start, and it allowed me to nail my first client and get him great results, shaving times off his mile and body composition changes, fat loss, muscle development, all that good stuff. So it really was the catalyst that allowed me to kind of continue my path. And when I saw he was launching his first mentorship program, him and I kind of stayed in touch throughout that process. I jumped on like without hesitation. And from there, he ended up helping me double my income and, stuff like that. So it was an incredible experience, getting into online coaching. And then, fast forwarding through everything I've kind of done up until now, I'm now a Flobility coach. I work with the company Flobility, Jordan's company. And essentially he's just teaching me as I'm teaching others. I'm learning myself every day. It's a struggle because it's hard I was talking about this yesterday. It's hard to know and then not know, but then teach people who don't know. Like, that you don't know, but you got to teach those who don't know either, but just a little bit more. You know what I mean?
Right.
And to provide scale, understanding 5% of Flobility is like a lot. Like it's a lot, it's a very dense and intricate system. So understanding 5% is like astronomical compared to 1. You know what I'm saying? And then 25%, which I'm at right now, is astronomical, obviously, compared to 5. So it's literally exponential. So the idea is that as I'm honing my skills and, understanding the concepts more, I'm then trying to translate it to those who are newer. So I'm trying to pay it forward that way. And being a Flobility coach with him, working for him has been incredible because he's given me a lot of opportunities, as an online coach completely. I can go wherever I want, which is, again, the whole sabbatical thing, and then moving to San Diego to be close to him because I need to learn from him more. But I know that was kind of a long-winded story, but that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm just grinding. We're ramping up content and trying to be better every day, trying to be more organized, more like a team, because we've all been like solo. Each of us, Jordan, Matt, and myself have been mostly solo, like running our own gigs for a long time. So we're trying to now come together as a team and show that dynamic online. Like, hey, like, guys, we're a team. We talk every day. You know what I mean? And sometimes that's not very clear. So yeah.
Yeah, I've been loving the interaction you guys have with each other online, sharing each other's stories and other like clients' progressions as well, and like giving each other notes and feedback. It's been like really fun to watch and see that. But you reminded me when you said, where you're at trying to teach someone new and still learning from someone else. You're kind of like that personification of that J. Cole song, Middle Child,
Yeah,
You're like,
yeah.
you're like, you don't know where you're at. You're kind of in between. You don't feel like you can do the whole thing, but you're still doing everything you can with that, right?
Right, exactly.
But really love, your progression through everything. Similar story to me in a lot of ways. I actually started off as a mechanical engineer. I don't know if I ever told you that.
Whoa,
But
that's dope.
I got my degree in mechanical engineering and just didn't really like it too much. Got into personal training, and then Cody Boom Boom himself, like on listening to his podcast, I discovered online coaching. I didn't even know it was a thing that existed until I heard his podcast. So like, kind of the same boat, little different trail. But when we first met, when I first worked with you, you were working on releasing mobile muscle. You were working a lot on FRC kind of stuff and that kind of joint health kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where, that's like in the past now, but tell me more about like what that time in your life was like, what FRC is for the people that don't know what it is, and what you were trying to accomplish with it as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, my understanding of the human body has evolved a lot over the last, how old am I? 27. I'd say the last like 6 years, 6, 7 years, because when I was like 19, 20, 21, I was just banging my body into the ground. I was doing insanity. I was lifting. I would do insanity for like 30 minutes to an hour and then go bang weights for 2 hours and then just go home and play video games for 4 hours. You know what I mean? So
just doing as much as you can.
Yeah. It was too much, and my body showed it. And I make a big point on my page to like teach people to like really see what's going on with the human body, because we can see things that people can't, and it's not their fault. We were never taught to see this way,
right?
And a lot of our platform is education and trying to help people like see what we're seeing. And off of that, I wasn't understanding what I was doing to my body until I started feeling it, until my brain started, communicating with me pretty much the only way it knows how to, which is pain. It's the only direct communication the nervous system can essentially start or create with you as a conscious being. And I started feeling like knee pain, back pain, shoulder pain, and I had chronic pain for sure, but it wasn't like so debilitating to the point where I couldn't get out of bed. So I like to be more. I used to say like, oh yeah, I used to have chronic pain, blah blah blah. It was terrible, and it was. But when I have perspective on some people that I work with or have worked with in the past, I understand like, oh okay, I was lucky. You know what I mean?
Because like you could fight through it basically.
Yeah, and it kind of, the pain kind of showed its face early on. That's a blessing. I know obviously pain isn't great. We don't like pain, but it's important, and it's actually one of the best things that we have as a response mechanism, because it literally tells you, hey, something is wrong. I need you to fix this. And it's the way that the brain at the most basic level, again, can communicate with you. So if something's hurting, there's a threat has been perceived, and then the brain is essentially creating that response from essentially the receptors on your body are receiving some level of threat, and that signal is then sent to the brain. The brain goes, oh yeah, this is not good, and then the brain kind of gives you pain. That's like the most basic level of pain. We don't really understand what pain is as it gets more complex, like chronic pain, right? Because there's stories of people, quote unquote, getting hurt, but there being no actual damage at the site. Sorry, I'm getting calls like crazy. And there's no actual damage to the tissue, like no damage to the skin or the muscles or bone or anything that's at the site of the pain. So it gets a little more complex. So I don't mean to simplify pain in the sense of like, that's all it is. You just gotta blah, 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 and that's it. Because it's very complicated. But going back to what your question was, pain was the first reason that I started looking into mobility training. So I looked at Supple Leopard by Kelly Starrett. That was probably the first mobility book. In fact, it was the first mobility book that taught me about something called myofascial release, which is a loaded term in and of itself. But it's just sort of the easiest way that, practitioners can communicate with people what we're doing. Because in reality, you're not really like, releasing anything. It's more of like a relaxant. Like it down regulates or up regulates certain tissue when you basically roll on a lacrosse ball. That's kind of what we're trying to do, and we're trying to hydrate these areas so they're more fluid and more mobile, quite literally. So that was the first thing I learned about rolling and that tissue work, soft tissue work, and that eventually led me to FRC a little bit later down the line. I just kind of saw it on Google on Instagram, and it spoke to me. I was like, wow, this seems cool. Like I think I need this. So I started doing it, and no doubt I definitely felt better. And I was seeing some results in that context. And I have to be careful here. In that context, I was seeing results, but there's a deeper thing that I wasn't understanding about the human body. Again, that changed once I learned what I really wanted out of my body. So I practiced FRC unofficially, meaning I wasn't certified, for like a year or so. And then I got a cert, and I was on it for a little bit longer, maybe like 5 or 6 months. And then I found Flobility, and the only reason I found it again, I was just kind of on my explore page, and I just saw some dude like on the ground training, and this guy was above him, like telling him to blow hard. And I was like, I don't even know, like, why is he blowing so hard? And then I asked, like, why are his pants so high? Like I had all the jokes, I had all the jokes that everyone else had when they see my page and when they see our pages, I should say. But I got curious, so I watched it, and then I tried a little bit of it, and I was like, oh shoot, that's kind of cool. And I reached out to him for a podcast, just like we're doing right now.
Right.
And he was like, nah.
Damn. Did you like that?
Yeah, he was just like, nah, bro, I don't really do podcasts. I don't like podcasts. I had to ask him like a couple times, man.
Okay.
But eventually he said yes, and it ended up being a slam dunk. It was amazing, bro. He shattered everything I knew about fitness and about health, what real health was. I didn't really understand what health was in the context of like longevity and getting old and all that stuff. And the main metric is the spine, like how the spine is changing over time and the muscles that are around it, and what's dominant when you bend over and stand up. What does your brain grab onto when you do these motions? Like that efficiency is health. The compression in your joints that is there or not there. And I can tell you, bro, all of us are compressed, myself included. I'm working on it, but we're all crazy compressed, bro. It's insane. It's insane when you understand how to see these things. You can't unsee them. But I got curious after the podcast, after he just like basically took a crap on everything I knew. I was like, all right, bro, teach me. So I hired him as a coach, and man, the first session I felt my core like I never felt in my life. And I was like, Jesus, like I've been missing something so large that it was just like right in my face. And then I started understanding posture and, residual structure and all that stuff. And he just kind of taught me as he coached me. And then I started teaching my clients. and then I started putting it in my programs. And eventually I was just like, you know what? I don't want to lift anymore because I learned that I couldn't move my leg or my arm or anything without using my spine and relying on one part of my body, which is basically the middle of my low back. I realized that I couldn't do anything without relying on that area, and I felt it, and it irked me. I was like, this doesn't make sense. Like I should be able to do this. I'm just like sitting. Why can't I get out of my low back? Like why do I feel that when I sit? That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense. So eventually I just became a flow coach, and I haven't looked back. I haven't done FRC in over a year. I haven't lifted weights in a really long time, like a really long time. But yeah, I've just been doing flow and pretty much dance like maybe 1 or 2 times a month. I was doing MMA for a little bit, but I had to cancel due to COVID and stuff like that. But
something you're gonna get back into though.
I hope so. I hope so. With the move coming up, I don't know if it's going to be very long, but I certainly hope so.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, looking at like how you progressed through this and where and the direction you ended up at, there was a lot of honesty you had to face within yourself for not so much what you like to do or what you're used to, but what is actually happening and what you really want to accomplish, right? You said that he took a crap on everything you knew, and that caused you to reflect on stuff. And I think like at that point in your career when you first interviewed him, you were known as like the mobility guy, right? That was the identity you set for yourself.
Yeah.
And when you put that, when anyone has an identity or ties themselves to something as close to an identity, it's really hard to break that mold and switch to something else, switch to a different ideology, do an FRC. And this was like everything you've been doing for the last couple of years, 3, 4, 5, 6 years. What was that struggle like internally? Because I gotta imagine there had to be some sort of struggle to try and switch your entire thing, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just to be clear on the timeline though, so people don't get confused.
Okay.
I did FRC while I was still lifting and doing FRC while I was doing Flobility for like 3 or 4 months.
Oh, okay.
And then I stopped doing everything but flow because
Gotcha.
and there's a story behind that. So I essentially experimented. I said, all right. So he was telling me, bro, like you have no idea what's possible. Like there's so much more that can happen. But he never told me, bro, stop lifting, stop doing FRC. He never told me these things. He just says that there's a lot more possible than you think. So I said, all right. I kind of hit me. I was like, okay, let's just see what happens. Because I asked him, I was like, oh, do you lift weights? He's like, no, not really. No, I don't. And I was like, how is that possible? Because he's, I mean, in person, it's insane. The in-person stuff makes a big difference, to put it lightly.
Okay.
But anyway, so I experimented and I didn't do anything but Flobility for a month. And everything improved drastically. Like all the metrics that I used for FRC got blown out the water. Like my shoulder internal rotation, my hip internal rotation, all these metrics that I used previously to essentially measure my progress expedited like exponentially. Wow. So at that point, it was just math. I was like, wow, okay. So I spent an entire year trying to get my shoulder to do this, and I could only get here. I did this system for a month, and it gave me like 25 degrees of rotation that I never had before. It didn't make it. It just, again, it was just math.
Right.
So at that point, I said, all right, there's no point in me doing anything else but this. This is all I want, And then eventually I kind of came to the realization that what I really wanted out of my body was freedom. And I kind of started putting the hashtag flow for freedom, essentially because I was tired of being like, I felt restricted by my low back and my weak hips and my weak core and my dominant knees. Like I felt restricted, like I couldn't do things that I wanted to do the way I wanted to do them, because I was always worried about, are my knees gonna hurt after? Is my back gonna hurt after? Because that's a big reason why I put up I don't know if you saw, I put up that dance before and after, because that spoke to me so much, man, because I wasn't afraid of my knees. I wasn't afraid of everything. And I was deep. Like I was low to the ground. Like my knees were very
Yeah.
bent, but I didn't feel them at all. I just felt my glutes and I felt my ankles, meaning my anterior tibs, the basically a muscle on the lateral or side of the shin toward the
Hmm.
front. I just felt those, and when I stood up, I didn't feel my knees. Like, I used to dance for sometimes 3 hours a day back in college, and I would be beat up, man. By the end of the week, like my knees would be so sore. My back would be so sore because that's all I was using.
Right.
That's what I learned throughout this. So,
Once you saw it for yourself, basically, that's when it's kind of like clicked for you, like, this is what I need to be doing. This is what I'm actually looking for in my life, in my
exactly,
body. Right.
exactly.
Yeah, I like that you use the term freeing as well, because I think when a lot of people think of freedom, they think of strength, the ability
Right.
to be really strong to move things, but it's really the ability to use your body any way that you want to use your body.
Yeah.
And, in Flobility, if I'm understanding this correctly, it's basically like when you decompress the spine, you're able to free up how you're able to move all the other joints as well, right? It's not just the spine that gets freed up. You're using everything much better. Is
Yeah.
that, good general understanding?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So now how do you go about that exactly? So I know, if you go on your page, it's a lot of unconventional poses that get a lot of people interested that they have never seen before. But, like you said, when you see the before and afters, there's a very clear distinction when you know what to look for. How do you progress in actually decompressing the spine and actually working on these individual parts? You're saying your knee works better, but did you actually do any direct knee work for that with Flobility, or what's that progression look like?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good question. So I think, and again, I'm going to be careful here because I don't like making claims. I don't like saying like, this because of this, like sort of a traditional
Right.
cause and effect style that we're used to seeing on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
Because our body isn't a linear system in the sense that, if my shoulder's hurting, oh, my shoulder must be messed up. That's not necessarily true. Or the same thing with my
Right.
knees. My knees hurt, so
Mm-hmm.
my knees must be messed up. I better go strengthen my knee. Like that's not, our bodies
Mm-hmm.
are very, very complex. So we need a complex solution for a complex problem. You can't apply that type of linear cause and effect thinking because that's kind of what led me to where I was at that time.
Mm-hmm.
My shoulder mobility sucked, so I better work on my shoulder. I better work on my rotation and all this stuff.
Right.
And it's not that it was wrong. It was just
Mm-hmm.
not seeing the full picture.
Right. It's essentially treating the symptom is what you're
Exactly.
kind of saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Kind of blowing away the smoke and not attacking the fire. So the fire that's I'm improving, but is definitely still there, is the instability at the middle of my body.
Mm-hmm.
So we call it proximal to distal, right? Are you familiar with the stability mobility continuum?
Right. The alternating joints.
Right,
Basically.
right.
Yeah.
From my understanding, it seems to be that everyone is the opposite. So what we want mobile is stable or frozen, really, and what we want stable is mobile. So we want a stable low back, but usually most people have a very mobile low back. You usually want stable knees, but most people have very mobile knees. And then the hips are stable, meaning they're frozen for most
Right.
people.
They're not as mobile as they should be.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like your hips are meant to do a lot. They're meant to do a lot. And my hips were doing nothing, absolutely nothing. And I realized that I had no hips from that, from doing Flobility. Because I saw, oh my God, like I could feel my hamstrings like I never felt in my life. I feel my hips like I never felt in my life. And then I would just feel, again, I would feel free after a session. I would feel tall and I would feel light. And I never felt that before. I'd always feel heavy after training. So it was a very big difference, honestly. But sorry, what was your question?
So now, basically, you're decompressing the spine. You're working on that.
Oh, right.
And you're not like, what are you actually working on attacking here?
Yeah. So the main thing for like a year, bro, is just lots of glute and core work, but not traditional like the way we were taught, where like you kind of just
Abductors and things like that.
Yeah.
Not...
It's different because again, the body is a complex system, so we have to teach the brain to rely on a system of equations to essentially freeze the middle of the lumbar spine. And a lot of that is available. The beginnings of it are available in our mini series that I can link you after. But essentially, we have to teach the brain to grab the hips and the core as opposed to the low back and the knees. It's a 180. It's a 180 flip. And that requires time, and it requires a lot of reps. It requires co-contractions, where essentially when you load the spine in most positions, your core, your waist tightens, and your glutes grow because they're preventing excessive tilting of the pelvis. They're stabilizing it. The core and the hips are pelvic stabilizers. That's what they are from a definition standpoint. And you can Google that. I put that up on my Instagram, and I was like, oh yeah, so the core and the glutes are pelvic stabilizers, blah 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 blah. And people said like references, like where's your references? And I'm like, bro, like you can just go Google that. There's tons of people online talking about it. But from my experience, not a lot of people are implementing it. What the actual literature says. And I learned what it feels like to actually implement the literature to the best of my ability correctly. And it's very hard because you learn how little we actually use our hips and how little we actually use our core. Even that word is loaded. So that's really the first step, just teaching your brain to rely on your core and your hips a little bit more over time. And then the decompressive aspect, you have to have really strong hips to be able to open up the back of the body, because everybody's rib cages, or I can't say everybody, but most people's rib cages it's a mess. It's just a mess in there. It's a mess. So there's a lot of like complicated things I could go into, but the main thing is that your body is relying on one part of it for like a lot of motions, and that place is the middle of the lumbar spine, and that creates a separation between the ribs and the pelvis. They're supposed to be residually tight like this, where the ends can move, but the middle is supposed to stay intact. The middle of the lumbar spine is not meant to rotate, and it's not meant to flex and bend that way.
Be like a pivot, like a hinge, basically. Like it's fixed at that point, but everything around it moves, right?
Right.
Okay. So, and then that point is basically where it connects to the spine, essentially, is what you're referring to.
What do you mean?
So like you're saying at this one point where it is supposed to be fixed, is that where the spine is, essentially, where the rib connects to the spine, where the pelvis connects to the spine? Or is that...
okay, I see what you're saying. So the part where most people are super mobile is called the TL junction. It's the thoracic lumbar junction, essentially where the thoracic spine and the lumbar spine meet. That's where most people do their bending and extending from. Some people who are a little less mobile in that upper part, because the higher the mobility of the spine, like that's what we want. We want to be high, like really mobile up top. But most people bend and extend there. Some people are lower, and that's where you get a lot of other problems, because if you're doing this all the time with your ribs and pelvis, there's a ton of nerves that are impacted by that. You hear things like sciatica, and my leg went numb, my low back hurts a lot. And again, pain is not linear in that sense either, but it's certainly not a good thing. So compressing nerves is not a good thing. They're meant to communicate information from the nervous system to the surrounding body parts and organs and glands and things like that. So again, I am not making any claims. We don't know to what degree a certain level of compression impacts a certain body part or organ or anything like that, but we just know that if that area is cut off at all, there's going to be some problems. You know what I mean? There's going to be some problems. So freeing the spine is about freeing the nerves and repositioning the bones with changing the musculature, because the bones, they can't change, but the muscles can, and the muscles dictate the position of the bones. So if we change the muscle, we can change, quote unquote, the bones. We can reposition them. with residual strength. And that is our measure of strength. What your residual structure is, how your body holds itself up in space without you thinking about it. Think of like an off guard pick, right? Someone takes a picture of you talking to your friends, like, what do you look like? That's strength.
Right. So what your natural posture is when you're not thinking about it, that's what you're looking for essentially.
Exactly.
Right? And then basically then that would reinforce either, positive, I don't even know what the term would be, positive like decompression, essentially, positive use of the muscles as they should be, or negative to where they end up now super compressed using, their low back as a mobilizer instead of a stabilizer kind of thing. Is that the right idea?
I just don't like to demonize anything or make something look better or worse, because it is all context, man. Like these professional athletes, a lot of them have terrible posture, but they can still do incredible things because they're athletes,
Right.
Again, these are all things that I've learned over this past year and a half. You can't train elite athleticism. You know what I mean? That's something that you're born with. You can't train to be LeBron James. You know what I mean? No matter how hard you work, like that dude is gifted. He's special. He's part of that elite athletic pool that you can only hone and improve on. But like that's in him. You know what I mean? Not to take away from his work ethic at all. Obviously, he's very skillful as well. But as an athlete, that's something different. Skill and athleticism are very, very, very different, just like skill and posture are different. Someone with really good posture can still get slumped in the MMA ring. Someone with really good posture can still get freaking knocked over on a football field. So it's still very different. So a lot of people mix the skill of what we show with the performance aspect of it. And the performance aspect is the efficiency as to which we're going from point A to B or doing a certain motion. The measure that we have is what's holding and what's moving. That is our measuring system for progress on, just doing what you love. So for instance, when I post my dance videos, I'm posting my dance video because I enjoy dancing, and like that's kind of what I've been doing for a really long time. But I'm also trying to show you, like, yo, look, I can do this stuff, and it feels good, and it looks better than when I used to do it. Like I'm obviously still in my low back and my knees. I will be for a long time, but the improvements are there. Like I have access. I have a better capacity, what we call it, a physical capacity to access my hips than I did before. If you go look at that dance post and that freeze frame, my knees are so far behind my toes, bro. Yeah. And my low back is really long. Most people's low backs are really long, man. And again, not good or bad. It's all context, but it's not health. It's not health.
Okay. So then you're striving for health in the sense of what the body was made for, or how you were born, essentially. Because I've seen you do a lot of baby picture comparisons, right? Of how they crawl, how they stand up, how they move. And you say, this is how the spine is meant to be. This is how you're supposed to be using it. But somewhere down the line, through life, through school, whatever training we do, our spine gets thrown out of whack. We repeat it enough times. We're not in our healthy state anymore. And that's what you're trying to relearn all over again.
100%. Our body has been in the poses that we're doing on our pages before. Our brain remembers. It's just our body is so uncoordinated in comparison. Babies are a great example to an extent. And the reason I say that is because if you see a baby sit on their butt, you'll never see them slouch the way most adults would. You know what I'm saying? Where they get smaller. When babies sit, they're upright. And I get a lot of questions about my shoulders. Like, oh, do you need to have the forward rounded shoulders? I'm like, my shoulders aren't forward and they're not rounded. Now I haven't gotten to the point where I can extend the way Jordan can. That's down the line. But the point is that there's a big difference between relaxed and forward and rounded. If you Google a spine from the side view with the shoulders they're lined up the way that we're showing. You know what I mean? Everything that we're doing is what the literature shows. But people are just used to seeing this down and back stuff, and everyone's
Right.
neck is so forward. It's become commonplace. You know,
Hmm.
I found it interesting because I have the Adobe Cloud Suite,
Hmm.
and they had an image of a woman listening to music, and she had forward head posture. Like someone drew
Hmm.
forward head posture of her listening to music. It's become almost like a cultural phenomena. Like
Right.
that's kind of what we've accepted as,
Hmm.
normal. But you look at a baby and their ears are behind their shoulders. When they
Right.
crawl, their ears are behind their shoulders. Their elbows are soft. And
Hmm.
so that's all we're trying to say. Like we've been in these positions before.
Hmm.
It's just about trying to get it because as you said, our life and the way we've lived has changed a lot of things. So
Hmm.
that's what we're working on.
So, man, that's actually really powerful because I think like just like when you're a kid, when you're a teenager, you have dreams of becoming something really awesome, and then life gets in the way and you lose that, and you lose that spark, you lose that fire. At some point, you can rediscover that flame and start pursuing that passion. And it's kind of the same idea, just physically with your body, is
Right.
helping you get that freedom again with your movement, freedom with that spine decompression, and helping you uh, again, not to be causal, but essentially move freely and have less pain as a whole, right? You're kind of rediscovering that spark that you had when you were younger and helping your brain realize it through reverse engineering, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Reverse engineering is a great word for it.
Yeah. Because you can't you can't rewire the brain directly. So you got to muscles first, work on that, make it natural, and go that way.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right, man.
Man. Okay. Cool. Now, all right, awesome. I mean, I don't want to take up too much of your time. I know we set up for this hour here. You mentioned a few resources that I can link up. Where can people find you if they want to see more of what you do and more about Flobility and how it goes?
Yeah, I think the number one thing would be to follow Flobility. So that's just at Flobility, like it sounds. And then you can follow myself. That's at Karon X Flow. And then there's Matt, who's another one of our coaches. He's at Matt X Flow. And then for those of you who speak Spanish and need the translations, there's at Fabrizio X Flow for Flobility in Spanish. So there's a plethora of resources to consider and to look into. All of our highlights and our posts and all of our stories are trying to educate and teach people what we're seeing and what we're working on, because none of this is done. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Our system is by no means done. We're refining it and making it better every day. We're taking data and notes and trying to improve it every day. So we're looking for things that prove us wrong. We're not like we're not about like, everybody's wrong about like people. It's really funny, man. I get so many questions like, is this bad? Like, should I not do this? Should I blah blah blah? Is this bad? Is this good? Is this bad? Like, I'm not here to tell you what to do. I'm just showing you something that is making me feel amazing and making a lot of other people feel amazing. That's all I'm doing. We have nothing to prove or nothing to say. We're just showing. You know what I mean? And
Hmm.
that is also something that I want to make a quick point about before I
Yeah.
leave. Um, I stopped talking in the sense of I've stopped saying like, this is the best thing to do for that. This is the best thing to do for this. You've been
Right.
doing this wrong your entire. I mean, you've seen those posts. You've been doing
Yeah.
this shoulder mobility exercise wrong your entire life. And for me, that's like, I don't know, man. Like that just seems wrong to me now. 'Cause I thought
It's
I
good.
thought I had it. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
you said, I thought I was the mobility guy. Meanwhile, I had no idea what I was talking about.
Hmm.
And it's not that it's not that I was like wrong or like incorrect. It was just there was a whole nother side of stuff I had no idea about. Things I had no idea how to see, how to even consider. So for me to be so arrogant and say
Hmm.
something like that is just not what we're about.
Yeah, man, I have a huge appreciation again for like how you guys present your information. Like you
Thank
mentioned
you,
it,
man.
it's not dogmatic by any means. It's always like constantly evolving, like you said, and there's just a lot of truth to that. You avoid that dualistic thinking of good, bad, right, wrong all the time,
Yeah,
because those things are the most clickbaity things, and they don't actually help anyone do anything,
big
honestly.
time, bro. Big time.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But going off of that, I have one more question for you. So this podcast is called the Not So Stupid Podcast, and we focus on simplicity above all else. So what is one or a couple simple things that you would encourage the listeners to do that would help make their life a little better as soon as they finish listening to this?
Excuse me. The easiest thing you can do is just try to sit on your sit bones. If you go on Matt's page on Instagram, he has a few posts talking about the sit bones and how to sit on them. Because I mean, like, the reality is we're all still inside for the most part. A lot of us have stay-at-home jobs now, so sitting is a lot more common. And how many memes have you seen about low back pain since quarantine started? Like, it's insane, insane. But sitting isn't bad. It's not. It's just
Right.
the way that you're doing it. You know what I mean? So again, no cause and effect, but there's definitely some type of correlation there. So there has to be something going on there. So just think about it like that. And then I'll give you a resource for our mini series. It's www.flobility.com/miniseries. So you can start with that for free. We do have an app. If you want to continue going with it, you can just reach out to me again at Karon X Flow, and I can help you out with that. But beyond that, man, it's just be mindful. You know what I mean? Just sit on your sit bones.
Yeah. So simple, honestly, but people don't even realize or might not even understand that I haven't been doing that.
Yeah.
On the note of the miniseries, I gotta say I have tried it. I've gone through the miniseries.
Oh, nice.
And it is so hard to breathe the way Jordan is asking you to breathe in those positions. And I know I've been recording myself to make sure I get it right, but man, it is definitely a challenge. Something I'm gonna try and work on. But you feel the difference, like you said, right away. You definitely feel the lightness, as you mentioned it, essentially.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome. I'm glad you tried it, bro. I'm glad you tried it.
Yeah, man. I'm trying to get that flow going. Trying to get the flow.
Let's go.
All right, man. All right, Karan, thank you so much for your time, bro. I really appreciate it. This was a great conversation. Everything that he said, if you want to see more of his stuff, is going to be linked in the show notes, guys, for all the listeners out there. But thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.
Thanks, bro.